In 2020, I lived in New Haven, Connecticut for some time, and the place was absolutely beautiful. After a week of living in a hotel and desperately searching for a place to live, we found a place called Winchester Lofts. It looked odd for an apartment building, but the rent was cheap, and the landlord was convincing. I had no idea about the backstory of the Winchester gun factory and the lore behind the family, but something felt uneasy about the building. It turned out that the apartment building was the old Winchester factory, and parts of it were still abandoned. Since it was never designed to be an apartment building, a lot of the construction didn't make sense. One night, I was walking my dog in the courtyard area on a cold January night at about 2 a.m. In that courtyard, there were windows from other people's apartments, and those windows were huge and at eye level, so if someone had their blinds open, you could see right into their apartment. While walking back to the apartment door, my dog and I were right alongside the wall when my dog suddenly stopped in front of a window. I noticed that the blinds were open. I tried to drag my dog away so people wouldn't be freaked out by me standing in front of their window, but my dog was frozen. I couldn't move him. As I turned around, I glanced into the apartment window and saw a man with a hood on, a full beard, and piercing white eyes staring at me while smiling. I locked eyes with this man for about a minute. I couldn't look away. I tried to run but couldn't until my dog pulled me away. I told my wife about the story, and of course, she didn't believe me. I went to my community Facebook page and wrote about what I saw. It turned out multiple people had seen that man in the window. That apartment was not for rent, and no one had lived there for 5 years. I have worked in healthcare for over 20 years and have seen some strange things, especially in nursing homes. One recurring event stands out in my mind. Many times I have seen a figure in black darting across the hall. Whenever I see this figure, within the next 24 hours, a resident will pass away. Often, another resident will die within a week as well. This eerie phenomenon has happened too many times to be a coincidence. But my favorite story is from a very small hospital where I worked. This hospital had only about 30 beds and had been around for many years. In the basement, there was an old morgue. There was also one elevator that went from the basement to the main floor, right outside the nurses' station. In the middle of the night, this elevator would sometimes come up on its own. The doors would open, and all the staff would get up, expecting that a patient had just passed away. One night, my co-workers and I were sitting at the nurses' station. Suddenly, we heard a TV come on at full volume down the short hall to our right. The sound was loud and startling. One of my co-workers and I decided to go check it out and turn the TV down. We walked down the hall and noticed that there was only one room down there that was closed off by maintenance. The door had a "Do Not Enter" sign on it. After checking all the open rooms and finding no TV, we realized the loud noise was coming from the closed room. We had no choice but to open the door. When we did, we saw that the room was completely empty, except for the TV, which was blaring. I walked into the room, feeling a chill down my spine. I turned the TV off and said, "Stop that. There is a sick baby next door who needs to sleep, so please be quiet." Then I walked out and closed the door. After that, there were no further incidents with the TV. This experience, along with many others, has made me believe that some things in this world cannot be explained. These events have stayed with me, reminding me that the line between the living and the dead is thinner than we think. It was my second night, taking care of an elderly patient in his late 80s. He was very sick and was going to leave for home hospice soon. In the middle of the night, I went to check his vitals. He was talking out loud in his sleep and moving around, which he hadn't done the night before. I woke him up and asked what he was dreaming about. He told me he was dreaming about being with his friends when he was younger, going to the bar and partying. He said those were some of his favorite times in his life. I thought it must have been a great dream and left after finishing his care. A couple of hours later, I went with a co-worker to pick up another patient. When I returned, all of my co-workers were freaking out, even our senior nurses. My patient had a portable video monitor because he could be forgetful at times. On the camera, they had seen multiple orbs shooting through his room, looking like shooting stars. We sometimes saw orbs, but they said this time there were so many that the room looked like it was glowing. Some co-workers even went in to check. When they did, the orbs disappeared, but they returned when the staff left. By the time I got back, the orbs had just stopped. About 15-30 minutes later, my patient woke up and decided to get out of bed. I went in and thought it was strange, because he hadn't done that the night before. I asked him where he was going. He pointed to a spot behind me and said his friends were there and wanted to play cards with him. My co-worker who was with me turned pale. I just said that they should play cards a little later and tucked him back into bed. I thought the whole situation was pretty wholesome. My co-workers thought I was crazy, but I felt like his friends just wanted to stop by and say hi. My co-worker told me a story about a tradesman I worked under when I was an apprentice. After some time, he became the maintenance man for our main office building and worked in the basement. Sadly, he passed away about a year later. One night around 3 a.m., a new security guard was patrolling the building and got lost. She said that a man working in the building gave her directions on how to get out. When she reported this to the guard sergeant, he was surprised because no one was supposed to be in the building at that hour. The sergeant asked her to describe the man who had helped her. When she did, he pulled out an ID from his desk and asked if that was the man she saw. She looked at the ID and said yes, it was him. The man on the ID was my former co-worker, the tradesman who had passed away a year earlier. I was curious and asked the guard about this later. She firmly told me, "I know what I saw." It was a chilling story that made me believe that sometimes the spirits of the past still linger in the places they once knew.